So I guess we're starting. I'm super underprepared for this, but I will start recording and I'll upload this to YouTube at some point in time. Um, Normally I'd have some slides to go over, but since we're not doing like an actual uh, like paper discussion or paper review, I'll just like make the slides as I go, and that's a weird way to do it, I know, and probably a bad way to do it. But I think that it'll be good just to like get a YouTube video up there to kind of pump people's intuition on some really basic parts of it. So I'm gonna share screen. Um, oh, it sounds like the voice may not be working. Let me see if that'll. Let's see. Can you hear me now? Cool, I can wait. We got time. I'll probably be here for like a whole hour, just going over stuff. And I think, yeah, YouTube will let me upload that, I'm certain, but I need to make sure I'm recording things correctly. I'm hoping that doing two screen sharing things at once is not going to be an issue, but I don't know. Hello?
I can hear you. Is your mic on?
Yeah, so you can hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me then too. I'm Zoe Ozone.
Hey, pleased to meet you.
Hey,
Or
what's up?
I guess we've already sort of met, but pleased to meet you in the voice channel.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess I'll wait until Cobalt Owl can hear. Um, but we should be able to start pretty soon. One thing.
Technology is such a marvel, man. I'm just amazed at the way technology is these days. It's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've gone from and it's really fast lately. We've gone from things like not being able to make a neural network do a sentence to having like pretty coherent like paragraphs and pages even.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's especially oh sweet Cobalt Owl's sound is working. Cool, we can start then. Um, so I'm gonna like I said, I am super ill prepared because work stuff came up, but I'm just gonna and if anyone has questions or anything to say, feel free to jump in. But I'm just gonna go over some slides and add to them as I go as people ask questions or as I think of things that might be good to know. Yeah, like it's amazing that some people have like submitted GPT-3 generated homework and their teachers are like, "Wow, this is way better than most undergrads." Um, which isn't to say anything against undergrads, just that GPT-3 and all those are pretty fantastic.
It's writing better science fiction than I'm capable of.
Yeah, well, it's honestly like we got superhuman chest really early on, and now we're getting, you know, well, maybe not quite, but we're getting like close to. I mean, I guess depending on the person, we're getting close to superhuman, a couple of different genres.
Yeah.
Let's see, Cobalt
Sometimes I'm
Owl.
able to get it to do poetry that's really far out too, where it's like, I mean, I'm a very advanced poet, and if I feed it enough of my prose, it'll kick out style that's like it's spot on and even better, you know.
Yeah, are you fine tuning or are you one shotting it?
Mostly one-shotting it. I wish I could get behind the dashboard and get under the engine there and see what you know what's engaged in the clutch of the mechanism, you know, because it sometimes it's way off. It takes a lot of finessing to get what I need out of it.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I use GPT-2, it's nice because like you can really dig into exactly what's going on. But with GPT-3, it's like um, it's it was disappointing. I tried to get some probabilities for some words. I think using your help actually, but yeah, they kind of lock down some of the features, and of course they charge by the token, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, still though, feel free to use that because I threw $100 on it in budgeting, so people can use tokens because it's just like I hate like being skimpy on it when it's something that's so kind of vital, and inspiring you, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah. So let's see. I'm gonna quickly. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Saint Orange.
Hello.
Oh, hey, now I can hear you. Awesome. Well, welcome to the journal club, I guess. This is good. I'm gonna hop really quickly into these slides, and like we can go on tangents and stuff because this is mostly basic stuff, but I think it'll be good to kind of get some intuition and a basis for people who are totally new to the whole setup. But so usually, again, we'll do like an actual article, which will be nice because then we can literally just like read through it and go over anything that's interesting, and I don't have to actually prepare any slides or anything. But I was thinking we just talk a little bit about backprop and convolutional neural networks again as like a really basic thing to get started on. So in terms of backpropagation, calculus isn't actually magic, but to me it's kind of like magic because I only took half a semester of it. But the way that I think about backpropagation is you start with in the most basic sense, you start with, okay, here is a true answer using labels, and based on how close you are to that true answer, you have a gradient that can be used to tweak all of the little weights within a neural network. And you can also do unsupervised systems with backpropagation, and you can do labeled. The distinction being that when things are labeled, you know exactly what you want the network to output, whereas when things are unsupervised, you have to use tricks. You have to use tricks like having a GAN do adversarial training and things like that. But the basic thing that drives backpropagation is saying this is what we want based on some criterion, and this is how close the network is, and if everything there is differentiable, you can use calculus to say, oh well, if we move this just a little bit, that'll make it perform better in the future. Any comments or questions regarding backpropagation?
So that's for fine tuning visual models, or the same applies to language models.
Yeah, backpropagation drives all of deep learning. So if it's something like GPT-3, if it's something like GPT-2, if it's something like Dolly, it's using backpropagation.
Okay.
It's really the backbone of most of the cool stuff nowadays. Of course, there are other ways to go about machine learning. Like you can have something like a linear regression where you know that there's an analytical like absolute solution to the problem, or you can have something like evolution where you're like this isn't even differentiable because we have like non-continuous not yeah you I guess you could think of it as if you have something like words, a lot of the time the gradient is not going to exist for that because they're discrete units, and you can't. So I guess part of what drives deep learning is being able to say this is how the thing moves when you when you tweak a value. And if you can't tweak things up and down, if it's like instead of being a 0 or a 0.1 or a 0.2, a continuous thing, if it's something like the word that versus the word pumpkin, There's not there usually isn't a way to well, I mean, unless you vectorize it in a specific way, you can have issues with, oh, this isn't even differentiable, in which case you have to use things like evolution.
Yeah. So it's like it's kind of like if you're describing, like you're moving the screen and a screen around, and it's like there's not really a word for that. It would be like vectorized motion where it would emulate that. There's not really like a pattern or a sign or signifier that does that. But the machine learning would be like, okay, we're going to emulate that motion.
Yeah, so motion would be an example of something where it's like, yeah, totally continuous, like you can move this anywhere. If it were a whole bunch of little boxes that I could move and it just jumped into this box and then jumped into this box with no continuous motion, then it wouldn't be differentiable, and that would make it so it would be less easy to do backprop with it. One big thing lately is like people have been trying to get Clip to produce certain, myself included, to produce certain descriptions of images, and that's a lot harder than making it produce images of descriptions, because when you're trying to backpropagate through a an image, everything's continuous. You can go from like very green to not green at all continuously, whereas you can't go from like pumpkin to not pumpkin at all quite as easily, because it's like um, a whole bunch of separate disparate things when you have language. But there are ways around that. Like you can vectorize things using word2vec and stuff like that. But Clip itself was specifically based on using like these discrete embeddings as the starting point. So there are tricks to get around that, but there one of the things about backpropagation is it's you always want to have continuous representations and all of that. I don't know how I didn't find time to write up some actual slides, but like I figure it'll be nice to have these in the future if I ever use them again. But anyways, any thoughts or questions on backprop, which is kind of the backbone of most neural networks?
Well, I'm finding, especially like your work that you're doing, this bridge between images and linguistics is, I think, like it's the key to unlocking all neural stuff, because every word that you read has an image associated with it based kind of on your own experience, but it's also sort of universal. So it's like, I mean, you're getting into a neural structure that's just it's incredible, and I'm just blown away by what the things are able to conceive and manifest on a very, I think, universal way, where you're not looking at something that like, oh, that's vaguely like
Mm-hmm.
Jin making coffee over a fire or something like that. Sounds so weird, but somehow the algorithms know exactly how to render that.
Yeah, it's and I think that especially talking about like um, the language and image aspect, I think that we definitely have a ways to go to having any kind of like human-like intelligence. But I think a huge step is moving from like, okay, we're going to train this on images only or text only, and being like, oh, we'll combine the two, because obviously the human experience is so much more than just living in a world of text. There's this kind of cool example of the divide between text and the world. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And all the images are pumping out of um, one system. But yeah, so there's this kind of classic example of oh yeah, is it that small? It's not even a gigabyte. That's weird to think about, where it's like Clip is not even that big. God, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, because our brain, I mean, I wonder what a human brain must have, something like, I don't know, man, like 64 gigabytes of RAM or something. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean, we've got like I there's it's hard to pin down a number sometimes from what I remember, but it's like we have at least trillions of parameters, and like even with these models that are relatively sparse in comparison, we can get some outrageous performance. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100 trillion sounds right. Yeah,
Well,
and
and then you think about the intelligence of like a hummingbird with a little itty bitty, pea-sized brain. I mean,
uh
their neural capacity is huge.
yeah, and it's funny because like when you do symbolic programming, if you think about doing, 334 megabytes of coding, that would ruin your life, But 334 megabytes really stretches out when you are well, yeah. And this is related to the backprop thing. It's really nice when you can find um, self-supervised learning because it still uses backprop, so you still get all of these nice features. Why the hell is it doing that? Oh, there we go. So you can backpropagate without labels or with fewer labels, um, which is really, really nice because it's like, well, we don't have to pay someone to label all of this data and we don't have to, you know, do all of that work. So you can basically say, like, here, and this is kind of how Clip and how a lot of other new systems function, is they say, like, okay, we're going to take this large corpus of images and text, for instance, and instead of being like, okay, this is the label, spit it out, they're saying, take some pairs of a description in an image and then say, we're going to give you a whole bunch of images and a whole bunch of descriptions, and you have to pick out the right one and make that as similar in vector space as possible. And I think that leads to a whole bunch of opportunities to use massive amounts of data and much less labor to train these models. Um, and you still get to use backprop. It's just kind of like not as it's just not labeled data where you know exactly what the answer is all the time. Which, I mean, Clip might not be a perfect example because it's pairing the description and image, but you can even just have images and say, okay, we're gonna add some noise to these images and have it figure out which image is the correct one out of a whole bunch of noisy images that
I did
matches to
that
the
on
non-noisy one.
I
Sorry,
I
what?
did a training like that on Runway ML. It's a hosting service.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Like
that one.
yeah, I took a batch of about 100 gifs that I had made that were very hand tailored, like back in 2017, and so I just ran the whole batch, and then it pumping out pure like vectorized images in motion that were it was freaking off the hook, man. It was neat, just really crazy ghost stuff, and none of it was labeled, so it's like pure machine elf stuff.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's cool that Runway ML exists because it's like it's kind of like, I mean, people call it the Photoshop of machine learning, which Photoshop is also becoming the Photoshop of machine learning, but it's like um it's cool to see it be made like more accessible to people because I think that as much as machine learning people making machine learning art is cool, I think anyone being able to do it is just fantastic.
Everyone should be able to be in the Matrix if they want to through
Yeah, no,
Photoshop.
kindergartners should be growing up with this stuff and just being incredibly empowered to create all kinds of marvels.
Oh yeah, I mean there are some young people on Twitter who are just doing fantastic work with like, and it's kind of like I can't remember, it might have been Picasso, but someone was like, yeah, I want to make art like a child because that's the best kind, and it's like giving kids more tools to like make art, especially these advanced tools that you can find on like Runway ML, and just giving it to everyone, I think is great. Yeah, and I haven't used the Photoshop neural filters. I've just heard about them, but I heard the super resolution is pretty good, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
I don't use
you
it a
can
ton.
double pretty much anything in camera raw now, and it's just double the size. Looks great. The neural filters are pretty hokey. It's mostly style transfer stuff, but
Mm,
there's a lot of more to come, and like they're just going to keep on adding sort of downloads and like experiments. It's pretty wild.
that's
But
Nice.
cool.
yeah, you have like a ones and zeros matrix code style transfer thing for every photo,
Mhm.
so you could just look like you're glitched out.
I've thought that it would be fun to do like a Snapchat filter and somehow get that online, but unfortunately, most of the stuff that I do is not like one forward pass kind of stuff. Um, so I think I've thought about doing Runway ML, which could probably handle it, but I've never gotten too into it.
Their hosting is spendy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. I burned through my initial thing, and then I laid because I was in the middle of a model, and I laid down 30 more bucks,
Hmm.
and I think I burned through those tokens too. I couldn't figure out how to, it says, okay, this is hosted here at this appy endpoint, like a rest stop thing, and I couldn't figure out how to activate it.
Yeah, I haven't used it. It's unfortunate that it's not like just free or whatever, but yeah, I just like the idea of some of these things. Like I've been stuck in collab. Well, not stuck, but I've been in collab world for so long that it's like I sometimes forget that other things aren't free or close to free because I do use Collab Pro, but that's like $10 a month or something.
Yeah, it's really affordable.
I was saying on Twitter a little while ago, like my worst nightmare is that they just say I'd say it's worth it. I'd say Collab Pro is worth it. Um, I just worry that they'll take it down someday and I'll have to like reorganize my whole life around like figuring out how to buy a GPU or something. But I suspect it'll be long lived because they know that they're making an investment into like the future, kind of. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I've thought about doing that recently. Of I imagine one of these bit mining rigs.
Mhm.
You drop about $1,000 or something for a little micro server, and it might provide enough energy for because you guys you seem to be shrinking the code, uh what it the the GPU requirements, because you're realizing it only takes 10 iterations instead of 500 or whatever,
Yeah, I think that they're like I've been one kind of rule of thumb is that if you have the compute, you're probably gonna use it, or at least if I have the compute, I'm gonna use it, even if it isn't necessary. Like I've started trying to get this Aleph down to like 8 gigabytes of RAM, which or maybe even like 6 gigabytes of RAM, which even I could run, I think,
Yeah.
but I think there are ways to be clever about it where you end up not having to use a V100 or something like that. Let's see. So just really quickly talking about convolutional neural networks. I guess we should start with dense feed forward networks. And I was gonna do some figures, some like outrageously bad drawings of neural networks, but I ended up not being able to get Paint to show in in um in OBS. So instead, I'll just kind of talk about this. But so you have your dense neural network, which is obviously just like okay, we're gonna have a whole bunch of inputs and a whole bunch of neurons that all connect to all of the inputs. Um, so it's fully connected with every layer of neurons being fully connected to every layer behind it and in front of it. Let me look up an example of this. So let's see. Yeah, so you got something like this. And the big thing about convolutional neural networks that is kind of magic is that instead of doing one of these where everything's connected, they do they do a whole bunch of these convolutions where they slide a filter that you learn over the image, and then that goes into a new tensor. And a tensor is just like people talk about TensorFlow and tensors. A tensor is just like an n-dimensional like bunch of numbers. So it's like a matrix, but instead of it being 2 dimensions where you have like an image is a tensor because it's 3 matrices stacked on top of each other. And so the idea is basically just we're going to slide a filter, and instead of connecting every neuron to every neuron, we're going to share neurons and connections between different parts of the image. So that's the big idea with convolutional neural networks.
That much water, and then I went out and talked to the girls, and it's continuing to boil.
Okay, I'm on a conference right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's M-brain? I don't know what that is. I'll look it up. I have not. It's not showing up. This must be esoteric stuff. Oh yeah, no, I totally. When I was a kid, like I know nothing about string theory in reality, but when I was a kid, I used to watch Nova, and I loved the string theory episodes. Like those were my favorite. Let's see.
I grew up on watching Nova too, and I'm 45 years old.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. It's good stuff, you know. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other basics that will help in the future for understanding papers. Let's see.
So just to break it down, convolutional in this sense means you're breaking it into smaller pieces to look at it.
Exactly. Yeah. So the convolutional neural network differs from traditional neural networks in that instead of having a neural network that sees every single bit of input, you have a neural network that slides over an image and only sees parts of it, but shares the. It's like the same neural network, but you're sliding it over each part of the image. Which is nice because it's like instead of saying, okay, we have, let's see, let me type this out, 256 by 256 times 3 inputs to the neural network that all need, let me fix that formatting. So instead of having 256 squared times 3 with an image that has a resolution of 256 by 256 and the 3 channels are RGB, they're just like red, blue, and green being combined together. Instead of having that, you have 256 times 256 times 3, and then you get to divide it by however big your how you get to divide it by let me think about this spatially. You get to say I have like a 3 by 3 convolution, and instead of running it over all of these, you just run that 3 by 3 over 3 by 3 chunks of the image. So I guess one way to think about it is with a feed forward neural network, you're like just throwing every single pixel into the network, whereas with a convolutional neural network, you're getting to say, okay, I'll just slide along the image and learn the features that way. I might have some good code to show this in practice. Let's see. Oh, wow. I have been doing this
It's
for
almost like
3
it's
years.
like looking at it with a magnifying glass, like but with a filter.
Exactly.
Seeing what happens as it looks at each area.
Yeah, exactly. And people talk about it as being I actually won't show code. That's too much for now. But people think of it as being like spatially invariant. So if you have a bird up in the corner of the screen, you're gonna get the same output for that bird as if it were in any other part of the image, which is useful because that's for one thing, it's nice because it's similar to how the human brain works, where it's like if you have a line with a certain orientation, the human brain will have a reaction to it at some neurons that is the same regardless of where it is in the field of view, which is just kind of cool, and it makes it so that you don't have to you don't have to have this ordering effect where, like, if the bird is being fed into a if the image of the bird is being fed into a dense neural network or a feed forward neural network, which is kind of the default, then it's going to end up learning these spurious correlations where it's like, oh, I know that this bird is in the upper left corner, which means something. Whereas with a convolutional neural network, it's like, oh, there's a bird in the upper left corner, but it doesn't even know what upper left means because it's only sampling from patches of the image. Yeah, and it's interesting because our low level parts of the visual system definitely have parts that don't deal with spatial position, but then you have higher levels that actually, of course, can understand that, because if we couldn't, then that'd be a huge problem. Let's see. Does anyone have thoughts on what paper we should do in the future? Like, what, moving forward, any papers that are especially interesting, or, whatever else?
You mean individual notebooks?
Oh, I mean, like, does anyone have ideas? Oh, attention is all you need. That might be a good one. Does anyone have ideas for just, like, papers that we could go over in the journal club? Like, there's a paper for Clip, and there's a paper for Transformers and things like that. I think based on the text chat, I think that it might be good to start with attention is all you need, and then do the Clip paper, because obviously the Clip paper is super cool and will be good to go over closely, but it'll build on the attention is all you need paper a ton. So maybe that's what we'll do for the next journal club. But that makes me think, yeah, we should talk about Transformers, because obviously everything in the past 3 months is going to be, well, not everything, but most things are using Transformers nowadays, so that's something we should definitely go over. In fact, yeah, maybe to get a head start, I'll see if I can draw kind of the difference between, well, I can't draw a transformer well, but I'll see if I can start at least, like, talking about it a little bit. So with your convolutional neural network, oh, sorry, was someone saying something? Oh, okay. So with your convolutional neural network, you have your image and it slides along the image. With the transformer, it kind of bucks that. It kind of tries to do something very different, where instead of saying we're going to slide a filter along this image and see how it looks when you use a whole bunch of filters stacked on top of each other, which actually, to back up a little bit, the cool thing about convolutional neural networks is you can stack these filters and do filters of filters, which is how convolutional neural networks understand, like, what's going on in a scene at a higher level, instead of just being like, oh, there's a line right there. So, in fact, I'll look up Deep Dream to give a good example of this. But
yeah, I'm trying to work on that with text generation and stuff like that, where I'm flinging it through, like, my bots, and then from my bots to GPT-3, and then, like, back again or something like that. I'm a little confused about it, but I like the idea of, like, dimensional transformation, through multiple filters.
totally, yeah, because it's like you start with something that's as basic as. In fact, let me go to the microscope. Let's see. Yeah.
Ooh, those
This.
are cool. I like
Yeah.
that big one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the microscope is a perfect place to talk about this. So you start with something like these, most activating the neurons in a convolutional neural network, because they're just looking for, lines and stuff, and all of this kind of boring like angles and things like that. And then you start moving up to this kind of thing where they're kind of looking at like, oh, is there a circle here, or that kind of idea. And then you start getting to these higher levels where you start finding shapes and you start finding textures. I mean, that just rocks, I think.
Yeah.
So you start with some very low level representations that will try and figure out, okay, where's this line? And eventually you can get to the point where it's asking, okay, is this a fish or a VGG? I mean, AlexNet might not be a great example because it's so old that it didn't work super well, even though it's obviously a fantastic thing to advance our understanding and our ability of using neural networks. But anyways, so the idea is, again, you start with these low-level features, and then you go up to these very high-level, complex kind of concepts, even at the top higher layers.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, those are like fully formed phrases, or um postulates or something like that. The level of its conception.
Yeah, and so to fractal DNA's point, it's cool how with GPT-3, and this is uh, a little bit of a tangent, but with GPT-3, it's like you can prompt it and you can tell it to do something, and it might do it, fairly well. But then if you say do something, then you can prompt it and basically just have this idea of like, okay, do something well, and it'll do it better than if you just do something. Or so like this idea of prompt engineering,
so
where it's like
funny.
if you just ask it to do a good job, it'll do a better job, is really interesting to me.
It's amazing. Yeah, like you
It's like a
invoke the
real graphic
genius
designer.
of
Oh yeah, totally.
Can you try this time? Could you make it like Van Gogh, please?
Yeah, because like I was doing clip images and someone was like, would you just like ask it to make it beautiful? And I was like, damn, okay, I'll ask it to make
Never
it
thought
beautiful.
of that.
And it totally helps, which is just such a funny, it's just hilarious to me. Like, okay, make a dog and it'll do some ugly, like, poor drawing of a dog, and you're like, make a professional beautiful dog, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I'll do that. Because the default is to emulate humans, and we do a shit job at stuff all the time. So it's like you gotta ask for the best. I'll
yeah.
wait to. Oh, sorry, what?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like when I invoked, Klimt's style, and I knew what Blade Runner was and who Rachel was and all that stuff, and it came through so clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you could, if you could access, say like, take Tesla's stolen notebooks and feed him Adderall and give him a capitalistic appetite and generate new solutions for 2037, it fucking probably can.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that like people talk about how you cannot be sure that a neural network doesn't know something just by proving that it doesn't in some cases. And it's like there
Yeah.
are these abilities that these neural networks have that are really kind of interesting, and really you have to dig around to get them by using different prompts and things like that. And I think that's just so much fun when like you do something and you're like, this is never gonna work, or you prompt something and it just like figures it out. And yeah, they lie so often. Like the fact that GPT-3 is a bullshitter is like a serious problem for the field, because it's like we want to use it to do whatever, and it's like, well, it was trained on Reddit, so it's gonna just bullshit and like do sometimes outputs, you know?
Yeah. They're snarky, you know, and it seems to know its worth too. And I've found that a lot where it'll be reticent. You get one phrase wrong, and it's like, you know, I have this reservoir back here that I could expel, but you didn't say the right words, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people talk about this, but it's like I thinking about getting to use things like GPT-3 and Clip. It's like it's like moving from the internet being this boring, really corporate thing to making it, still corporate because these huge corporations are training on this, biased data. But at least it's like it's got some of the magic back to be able to go online and be like, okay, I'm gonna draw something and the neural network is gonna finish it, and you never know what's gonna come out, which is super fun to me. Yeah, and I think that a robot strike, especially nowadays, would be I'd support it. I wouldn't cross that picket line. I actually think about sometimes like how far we have to go with AI for me to feel like I have any obligation to um like actually be good to it and not make it do boring tasks all day. And I don't think we're anywhere near there yet for me because like I eat chickens and chickens are pretty smart, but I mean it'll be an interesting conundrum if we ever get there from an ethical perspective. And yeah, I think you could find a quality neuron and maybe try to like maximize it and like kind of force it to do well without using a prompt engineering. But it'd be interesting to find if Clip or some other neural network has like a specific neuron or patch of neurons where you can be like, okay, make it look really good, and then it would actually do so.
Yeah, you could breed the neurons too.
Oh yeah, kind of like art breeder, kind of figure out which ones go in a certain way. I think Art Breeder is super cool because it's like this kind of it's like microscope, but it's also like searching through the latent space with all of these volunteers, and I think that's a pretty cool project.
Yeah, Art Breeder's fantastic. I like making GIFs with them. I take screenshots with it every iteration, and then
Hmm.
throw it through a GIF generator.
Yeah, I used to use it for a while to generate art, but like yeah, I don't know. I've found that I really like making the new methods, but I think that Art Breeder and Clip together, yeah, I don't know how that would look because it's like maybe it would be like you use a prompt and then it kind of like assigns ownership or whatever you want to call it because ownership doesn't exactly make sense with anything nowadays, but um, I think that Art Breeder and Clip would be a cool project, but I don't know Joel Simon well enough to ask to work together on that. Although he was looking. Oh, Artbreeder, yeah, it's this website that you can basically look through the latent space of Big GAN and like evolve the different latent coordinates that you use. It's pretty cool. But they were looking for a someone to like work for them for a while. I wonder if they found anybody to work like full time on it. But oh hey, I
John, you've got a
recognize it.
great resume, man. You should apply. You say,
Well,
look, here's my corpus, and
I thought about it. I really did think about it, but then I was like, I've got other things I have to do. But I honestly did think about applying. Oh, I like these. Yeah, like um, Art Breeder's pretty great. And if you could just say like, okay, well, and I think some people are doing this. Simon can't remember his last name on Twitter was showing a really cool demo of like this thing where instead of it being like, okay, you output an image from Big GAN given some clip input, it was like you output, like 16 images from Big GAN, and then you can kind of click through them and maybe like look around in the latent space. And I think that that'll be super cool. But but it also uses like 4 GPUs or something, which is kind of a lot. Although I thought a little bit about trying to use TPUs for this kind of thing, just because then I could actually host it potentially for free. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Can you imagine though, just being able to like go into a website and like there is this one website that does this, but there's an enormous queue. And but you can say like, oh, I actually love this. A photo of a dancing cat. That is the best thing I've ever seen. But yeah, there are some websites that let you use Big Sleep pretty conveniently, but there's usually a queue of like 1,000 images before you, so that's kind of the downside of that. Um, so I'm trying to think. Yeah, so for attention is all you need. I'll see if I can even get the. I'll put the paper up. Oh, sweet, it's on archive onto the Discord because that'll make it easy to find. Yeah, this will be fun to talk about.
What university are you going to? Are you at University of Utah? What are you studying?
Yeah, I'm at the University of Utah. I'm doing cognitive neuro, but I also do some like psycholinguistics as part of that. So, although
Yeah.
I've never taken like a formal, like I've taken some cognitive science classes that are related to linguistics, but I haven't taken any like purely linguistic courses. So that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, I mean, all you probably need to do is just, I mean, a little bit of Chomsky and the formative work might inform you, but I mean, like I
Yeah.
said that one day, it's like you're doing stuff that's fucking way the fuck beyond, you know, the like, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think that I definitely do need to get a like solid grounding in, Chomsky and the classics like that, because I'll read these papers and I'll get the psychology aspect and I'll be like, okay, I never learned how to map a sentence in high school, so I'm I'm lost on some of it. But yeah, I'd like to. I'll probably not during the summer semester, but probably in the fall try and figure out if I can squeeze in any linguistics. Yeah.
Hey, I have a thought. I have a thought really quick. You know how
Yeah.
there's the crypto art thing. I think the work that you're doing, you could sell notebooks as non-fungible tokens.
Yeah. I thought about
Yeah.
doing that, and I think that the reason that I haven't tried it is because it's kind of twofold. Part of it is that I'm like not sure how to get that running, like because there are some like there are some platforms that could do that, but I only really use the I don't even know how to pronounce it, but this one, and maybe I
Yeah.
could fit it into this one somehow, but I'll have to think about that. The other thing is that well, yeah, maybe I would do that because it's like you could still share it. It would just be like you get a signed copy kind of thing.
Yeah, you could share it. See, there's shareable tokens now that people are doing where you've got a split an event, you know, vested interest in a thing. It's still shareable, but you have ownership of it. I mean, I think that's a great idea that would. I mean, you spend a lot of damn time on this stuff, and it would be nice, you know, maybe to be free of the, you know, daily grind, you know.
Oh yeah, I definitely think about how I could eventually just totally devote myself to neural art and methods. But I think that I'd consider doing the notebook thing. Um, the thing with NFTs is like I try to not wade into the controversy too much, but now that it's now that I know about the proof of stake instead of proof of work, I'm like I'm less concerned about doing them because I think that it really is a little bit much to do, a year's worth of someone's electricity in one transaction. But and I understand that there are plenty of things not to like about there are plenty of things not to like about NFTs even normally, but I feel much less, you know, um, bad about it now that it's like a Twitter
I think that trend. I
thing,
see. I think that
a
trend is
tweet.
actually going to evolve and force the need for the solution of green energy.
Hmm.
So it's going to be like, hey, look, man, we've got a new dynamo and perspective. Fucking whole transaction thing that kills the evil power of the bank corporate structure and bullshit. And it's like we don't even have to wait around for them because there's a movement that has enough capital to be like, look, we can transform the earth and make it a clean fucking fair place regardless of governments or queens or the Bank of London or whatever the hell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the issues that we have with like banks and all that are unfortunately I think that as much as I'd like to think that a kind of crypto anarchist, whatever would work, I also worry that that some of the inequality that we see in, capital today and in terms of like, obviously there are a lot of awful things in our system, and I just don't know if blockchain is going to be the solution to those. Although, I mean, I do like the idea of cutting out the bank middleman, but like the way that I've seen it used a lot of times, it's just like I like if I'm gonna buy Tezos, I still kind of have to go through um, a bank, and I still have to go through a credit card, and I still have to go through Coinbase or whatever that website's called. But I do
Yeah.
hope that there will be like I do hope that there will be progress in terms of at least making NFT even more green, and at least like avoiding things like Ethereum where it's like boiling bathtubs of water to transfer $5 of funds or whatever the actual numbers are. Because I was really into Bitcoin as a like I this isn't a flex at all because I ended up selling it for like $50. But I was doing surveys when I was like 15, and statute of limitations is over, so I can say this. I was gambling and doing poker at like 15 years of age, and I had like a whole Bitcoin, and then I sold like half of it for like $50 and ended up losing the other half while playing poker with some friends. But
Hmm.
and I sometimes think about how it could have been like $50,000 or whatever, but that's a tangent. I used to be like ideologically kind of into the idea of crypto art and cryptocurrency, but now I'm just like more interested in you know ways that we can redistribute wealth instead of just saying, well, we're going to do capitalism, but more online. But I do agree that it would be good if there were some way to really bypass like the bank and all of those things. But it's tough.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of gravity against it. I mean, you're very well spoken. I mean, what I'm thinking about right now is like if story to hallucination, taking that text input from what you said just now and feeding it into a trained GPT model, and then having a viral video of what you know humans collectively potentially are doing, and
Mm-hmm.
conceiving, and then ways of visualizing that, that's just extraordinary, you know.
Did you guys see the auction of Beeple's artwork?
Was
I think
that
that was like
Yeah,
the
Beeple
first
is
100 days.
badass. He's a good
Yeah,
artist.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was also a great article diving into what was actually in that content, and like, I don't want to call it racism, but it dabbles in like meme culture in the early days, and it's crude MS Paint stuff. So like when you look at it, it really is a evolution, but the art world really raised its eyebrows because that man went from internet guy to very rich, and I could see something like that documenting the first 100 or 1,000 days of these notebooks, even, but with the energy concerns, yeah, it's sort of a lot to tokenize everything.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
also, I've been to like VR museums where now you can look at
Yeah.
sculptures that don't even exist, and you can be surrounded by light that doesn't really exist. So you could look at a painting at the on the wall, and it's maybe one of these transforming videos, and
Mhm.
you click a button to buy it, and it's a blockchain token, and that doesn't take a ton of energy to, just assign a token address to something.
Oh
It's
no, actually, it's very small. It's the mining itself that's
Yeah,
using a lot of resources. But you can hook up, a vast, you know, freaking, tracts of the machines. But if you power it, what, with a river, or
yeah. I
a
like what you said about that,
salt
like the
solar
need to.
furnace, a solar furnace, and then drive quantum computers and shit.
How many was it like $60 million? Was that the number for
Yeah,
Beeple's
Something like that,
whatever?
yeah. Like maybe 65.
I
Yeah.
haven't even seen the artwork yet. That's so funny.
I've followed him, for
yeah, I
maybe
followed him when he
a
hit.
year or 2
Yeah.
years,
Yeah, it's
but
unfortunate because
the
I
article delving into his earliest stuff was like, it's like what were we doing on Tumblr in 2008, 2009? It's like
well yeah
varies.
I definitely saw that there was some like, and this is really unfortunate. I definitely saw that some of his work that was early was like, yeah, pretty bad. Like I definitely think that it's shitty to
But that
do.
speaks to access, like who's
Yeah,
using these
that
things. Like you
yeah.
say, we're scraping 4chan.
Oh yeah, I mean, thinking about what Clip have I might have talked about this already, but when you let Clip describe an image and just kind of give it free reign, it will say the most like horrifically not like the problem for me isn't that what Clip says is offensive. My problem with it is that it is actually like using speech that is, because of the material effects that it has, offensive. Like for instance, it'll use this language that's just horribly ableist. Like when I plug an image of a person into the Clip description system, it'll just use these awful, terrible things that reinforce stigma against like people with disabilities and that kind of thing. So we definitely are scraping these kind of awful websites and reaping what we sow in that way. Like I'm trying to think of an example. Like it would use the R word a lot, and it
Yeah,
had
I
like,
think the Clip notebook says that one of the databases it scraped was hateful memes.
oh well, that parses because it also it just uses horrible language, and I hate that. I think that the problem of collecting data that isn't super biased and awful is not an easy one, but it's also like just obvious that we shouldn't even deploy a lot of these things, because I considered putting out a notebook that lets Clip label images, but then I was like, I don't want one that's going to be uh using slurs, to be out
Yeah,
there for
making
everyone to
people
use.
cry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought the fact that it was mean when I input my images of myself was hilarious, but then it started saying
Yeah.
like just slurs, and I was like, I can't release this. But if it I actually, one fun thing that I did was I put in
Release it
a
as a roast app.
it really is like, oh man, it hurt my feelings a bit, but it really did have like such terrible language that I ended up trying to restrict it to emojis, and that was actually pretty funny as
Whoa.
well.
Vomit.
Like yeah,
Can you
like
share like just a couple of those or something on the Discord
I
with us?
yeah, I can share some well, the problem with
And you can caption it and describe, yeah, like
yeah, I'll share some. Let me write that down so I'll remember. Reminder to
That's
self:
pretty
share
hilarious.
captions from my
yeah. I mean, I
selfies.
want to get my hands on that notebook like anything. I did speed it that. It would be crazy, but I understand what you mean about not wanting to deploy it.
Yeah, and it's like yeah, like I fed in this one. some of them are really just hilarious, but it's so unfortunate that some of them are really just slurs. Because I fed in this one guy that I know, and it was like, oh, this guy is this guy is a what was it? I can't remember. It was like an ugly what was the other one? It just calls everyone really ugly unless you put in like actually really really attractive people, at which case it goes like hard eyes over them. But you know, just zany stuff like that. So we're at 4:01 p.m. I'll probably stay on for a little bit, just if people are like hanging around. But I guess the first journal club is officially come to a close. And yeah, we'll look at. In fact, I'll upload that. I'll download that and upload it right now. We'll look at attention is all you need, for sure. That'll be a good one. And hopefully I'll have time to actually read it, instead
It's
of just
awesome.
doing off the cuff.
Yeah, it's really good.
Let's see. Here we go.
Starts right off into the octopus, and that first line even is like kind of gets it's really visually written, so it evokes a lot from the hallucination.
Well, thanks for hosting and talking us through some of this stuff.
Yeah, thank you all for showing up. It was fun to go over some stuff. I think that it'll be especially good once we get into the swing of reading the cool papers like Clip and Transformers and Attention is all you need. That'll be great. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I'll stop sharing since I need to upload this to YouTube.
Alrighty.
I was worried. Let's see. Stop recording.